Hello, I'm Charles Babb. This is Spirituality in Sports. We'd like to welcome our guest today, Chad Hennings. Chad, thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Chad, Tony Romo's retired. He's just joined the booth. Tell me about that. What's your reaction?
You know, it's a positive thing, I think, overall for the team as well as for Tony. There was always, you know, inside every man, I think, is that aspect of wanting to go out to conquer, to subdue, to compete. And when you no longer can do that from a physical standpoint, you know, it's tough for man to know when is when. And I think every professional athlete goes through that there's never a right time, and very few guys get the opportunity to go out the way that they want to go out, ideally, you know, on top as a winner, as a Super Bowl winner. I can only think of a couple guys that have been able to do that. But I think for you know, Tony's perspective, the way that he went out from a character perspective of basically seeding the team to Dak last year, that with the success that the Cowboys were having in Tony's absence during his injury, you know, it was a good time for him. Sure, could he continue to play? Yeah, I think he could for 2 more years, but you know, the 2 of the 3 times that he's been stepped out on the field, he's injured himself. Yeah. And the older you get, you don't bounce back as quickly as you used to. So for him, long term, 2 young kids, you know, wife, family, a lot of years in front of you, it's time to, I applaud him in his decision of taking that next step in life.
What does his legacy look like as a Cowboy now?
You know,
I've always thought he did better than what the fans gave him credit for.
Right, and you can probably make that comparison to Danny White too. You know, Danny White was a phenomenal quarterback. You know, he led the team through the playoffs. You know, get to the NFC Championship, but he just never made it to that next step because everybody compared him to his predecessor, Roger Staubach. And you know, everybody's going to, you know, these contemporary quarterbacks are all going to compare him to Troy. But I think Tony, you know, he owns 3/4 of the Cowboy quarterback records.
It's amazing, you know, his career, really, it's amazing.
Really phenomenal, and he's, you know, rated as the highest rated quarterback, has the highest quarterback rating for the month of December, and, you know, November, December. So he's, you know, he's been a phenomenal performer. But I think there'll always be that asterisk that did not win a Super Bowl, unfortunately. And that's just, you know, it's a fact of life.
What does Dak Prescott have to do now to take this team? Because it's now his team. It's a totally different situation than last year. It is his team coming into the season.
You know, for Dak, I think it's going to be the concern about the sophomore slump. Was last year legit? Can he continue to put together the numbers that he did and perform the way that he did year after year after year? And that, I think, for Dak is going to be a mental, more mental than physical. He has all the physical tools and capabilities. He has the team around him. Now it's, for him, it's a mental exercise. Can he do it? So, and time will tell on that one too.
What does Dak have that impresses you? What does Dak have that, as a defensive lineman, you would, in your playing days, you would look back and lick your chops on?
Well, I mean, what impresses me, he's a physical guy. He's big. He's not afraid to tuck it and run it. He's mobile. And that's what, from a defensive lineman's perspective, we did not like, because it maintained that you couldn't improvise. You had to maintain pass rush integrity, maintain your lanes. Don't go outside your lane, because you get pressure, he can step up and find that gap, you know, and get a first down and gash.
3rd and long turns into first down. And
right. But then again, you know, that's with that same token with mobile quarterbacks, when they step out, once they get out of the pocket, game on, they're a running back. And you can, you know, the hits can accumulate. And you don't want to do that too often, but for him, it's finding that balance. But from what I saw last year, he has the balance. He only tucks and runs when he has to.
Cowboys this year, what do they have to do to reach that next level? What do they need in this draft, and what do they need to add to this team to make it?
Pass rushers.
Pass rushers.
Offensively, they're fine. Pass rushers, pass rushers, pass rushers, and you know, they lost their 2 corners. They signed a guy, but can the secondary continue to hold up? Big question marks are on defense.
Ezekiel Elliot, phenomenal talent, seems to be having some issues off the field.
Well, I mean, that's just, I think, youthful indiscretion and lack of maturity on his part, that this is no longer college, that it's no longer a fraternity type organization, that this is your job. And with your job comes responsibilities on and off the field. And I'm sure he has individuals that are whispering that and if not fronting him up with that. But you know, it all comes down just to his identity. I mean, who does he choose to be? And when you have access to, you know, as much wealth, material things, fame, fortune, that can be some pretty heady stuff for an individual that's, you know, and I'm not saying that's Zeke, but for an individual that's not grounded in who they are with their purpose. And he's a carefree spirit. And but, you know, it's great to have that, but at the same token, you got to know when is when and keep between the ditches.
I think it was Chris Spielman who said something about, he came out with a pretty tough response to it. He said, look, we can say he's young, but the reality is he's in his 20s. He's old enough to know better. Chris is, of course, Chris being Chris, he's very blunt and forward with that. Where does this become a distraction for the team? And where does it put the team at risk? Because they're expecting him to carry the load.
Well, from my past experience too, we've had individuals that did that during the season. You know, right now, thankfully, it was off season. I mean, I'm not condoning anything,
sure,
but
absolutely.
But from a Cowboy organization standpoint, that they can get certain things rectified, and make sure he knows his responsibilities and/or put consequences in front of him, knowing that future actions like this, you know, they can't be tolerated because, right, you put yourself at risk, but in this, as a team sport, you put your teammates at risk. And they just got to make it known that that cannot be tolerated.